Okay, hi, this is Chad. I'm going to be talking about the watercolor basics and textures. The assignment, in a nutshell, is demonstrate 12 watercolor techniques. And I actually have those listed here that I'd like you to do. Notice there's a lot more. It goes to 22, and that's the deal is if, go to 12, and if the other ones are optional. So 1 through 12, I think, are pretty solid water techniques that are helpful to know. I think 13 through 22 are also helpful, but not totally necessary. Like, not everyone uses them, but I think 1 through 12, most watercolorists use. So I want you to be familiar with that. The other ones are extra credit. So if you have more than 12, yeah, extra credit. So I'm going to get going on these. And I'm just going to follow the project sheet. So the first one, I have my water over, or my palette over here. Hopefully you can kind of see some of it in the camera. I'm just checking or back behind and to see how things look. So first one is a solid wash. So what I'm going to do is make sure I have a pretty good pile of paint. And one way that to possibly do this is to like put it in another container. So I might grab some of this and just drop it in here. And these are, so my palette is a little bit goofy because it's like arched in the middle, so it flows out. But it is nice to have a load of pigment, like a little pool, right? So that's what we're doing. We're making a little pool here. Let's put here on this on the corner. I have if you haven't noticed, my watercolor paper is taped to a board, and it's on something, so it's on a slant right now. So what I'm trying to do, trying to get a bead of watercolor. So I'm just flowing this down now. If I set for a minute, you can see how it gets a little darker here. Lighter on top. See how it's wet, so the watercolor and paint are flowing down, and they're making this bead that I need to just keep going, keep it alive. And you can see when I keep adding, there's that bead there. It just keeps flowing down, which is great, just what I want. So that's a solid wash. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to rinse my brush and wipe it off, get a dry brush, and then I'll come back in here. You can see that bead is still there, so I'm just going to use this capillary action on it with a dry brush to, now I'm going to go to, just get another little pile of something. So we're going to go from, oops, got some on my page. Okay, so let me add some to here, and we're going to go from a gradient, from color to nothing. So let me just get again a little pool of color, and I'm going to mix up the color just to kind of keep it visually interesting for me mostly, but maybe you. So here's my pile of color. Oil painters would call it a pile because they actually have a pile. We have a pool as watercolorists. Okay, so we have our bead again. Sorry, I have a brush in my mouth. And now I'm just going to use some clean water, rinse out my brush, and basically just paint clear water on this to help that flow down. And I might do a couple strokes of a excuse me, of a watered down variation, but as I'm putting water on this, the gravity is really helping it move down. And I'm going to try to just clean this up. Okay, and because it's wet, it'll even out best it can. So there is our number 2, color to nothing, basically, color to paper. Next, we're going to do the color to color. And let me see if I can find another color that I already have. Yeah, this is good. Okay. Put some water in here to kind of activate this. Okay, so all right, so yep, so I'm going to do a couple strokes of this pigment. I think it's like a burnt orange type thing. Then I'll mix a little bit of, I'm going to move that into blue. So I'm just touching my blue and getting a slight more of a mix. You can see that changing to green. And now I'm going to kind of stick to my blue palette instead of pulling from my orange. Now I'm going to start pulling from the blue. And because it's wet, because the wash is wet, everything will just kind of move together really nicely. And I'm trying to, why I keep rinsing in between is so I can get a very pure color on these last little strokes here. Okay. So that did an okay job blending between those. I'm going to try to use a dry brush and pull out this dirty, kind of tainted pigment in my one pigment pan right here. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4 is wet on wet. So I actually am not terribly happy with give me a quick second. I'm going to fill up with water. Sorry about that. You can fast forward through it. Yeah, my waters were just getting pretty dirty, so I'm just using some nice fresh clean water. And so yeah, so here I'm going to get some of this clean water and I'm going to saturate my 4th square, preparing for the wet on wet. Okay, so as I look at this, it is very mirror-like right now. I'm gonna and very glossy, so I'm gonna wait just a little bit and then I'll do some I'll probably do just a simple like milk mixture on it, meaning pretty thick paint, but not as thick as like the cream or butter, right? If you remember our one demonstration about watercolor getting adding water to the paint to dilute it, and then also there's a whole nother timing going on with the paper. So right now this is getting matte, so I think it's probably a good time for me. I'll bring up some paint and we can see what that will do. And this mixture I would probably call milk, about a milk phase. I'm going to let this bottom part dry just a little bit more till it gets pure matte, and then I'll use that same milk phase on it. Excuse me. So we can kind of see the difference. But this is wet on wet, and you can see what happens. You know, it spreads out. It gets very soft edges, and yeah, it's drying out pretty good. So I'm going to actually use almost a cream on here so we can kind of see what that does. And then I'll push that back to a milk like I was mentioning, and we can kind of see what that does. Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so now we move to number 5. Wet on dry. So wet on dry we'll do right over here. So that means I'm just going to get some, actually I'm going to probably activate my red, and we'll just use this for our wet on dry, meaning wet watercolor, dry paper. So you know, there's kind of a bit of, you know, drawing or traditional painting, it feels like, because it seems like this is kind of a more kind of a go-to method, is painting wet watercolor on dry paper. I'm going to hold my brush down at an angle and go across quickly. This is also this is a wet on dry. And I moved that to more of a cream mixture. And I'm going to try to get, trying to activate this to be kind of a butter. Yeah, okay. And it's also a dry brush, but yes, this is wet on dry. Okay, so that's number 5. Number 6 is lifting. So we'll need, we're going to do a solid color over the whole page. And why don't we, yeah, let's just, this is a cool gray that I'm going to be using here. Okay. And again, this is lifting. So what is lifting? Lifting is pulling up watercolor when it's, I mean, you could do it when it's dry, but yeah, you could do it when it's dry or wet, and you're just basically reverse painting with a dry brush to get it off the page. Let me show you what that looks like. So I'm going to get a clean, dry brush. So I'm just kind of drying it off really well on this little towel thing. And I do need a little bit of, okay. Okay, so it's kind of a reverse painting, so we can re-expose that paper, but not fully. Notice that it's still has some, the paint still affected it quite a bit, and the edges are quite soft. So lifting is a nice way to add like white back into a page. But it does have some, it does kind of retain some soft edges, which can be nice. As long as you know that, oh yeah, I can't like completely delete what I just did, right? And I'm just gonna, and you can scrub over it like this if you want. And if you have a dry enough brush, it'll just like suck up the a lot of the moisture. So this is lifting, okay? All right, so now we'll go to a palette knife or a dry brush. So palette knife, okay, so I'm going to use a palette knife, but I'm also going to use another tool. Let's start with a palette knife. We'll do that on here, number 8 it should be. No, 7, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah. 7, so let's see. So can you do palette knife painting with watercolor? Yes, you can. It's also nice to add textures in as well. So let me get some. Yeah, I'm going to use some wet paint rather than reactivated. I'll just get some from the tube so we can see how that works, because it's a little different. Okay, so that's basically it. Here's the other tool. It's a credit card or a cut up key card from a hotel or whatever you got. I've been in the habit of just kind of like if I get something in the mail, like a promotion or something, I'm going to keep that and use it. I do like the very natural, almost stone type texture that you can get from that. Or it also, to me, reminds me of like maybe some far away, let's try to get a little bit darker in here. Some like plants or foliage. Yeah. Okay, so that is palette knife. It says palette knife and dry brush. Here's dry brush back here. It's basically just pulling a not saturated brush, but a somewhat, well, just quickly across a dry page. Then you'll get that nice dry brush effect. I'll just do it real quick so you can see it again here. So to do that watercolor, or the palette knife, sorry, back to that, yeah, it could be a ATM card out of your wallet, whatever you got. Yeah, let's do a quick dry brush in another color so we can see it. And we'll get a brown here. And we'll just run it across this page. So, Yeah, so that's the idea of a dry brush, is it just really skips across and sketches on the page. Okay, so we are at blotting. Okay, so blotting. Blotting can be done with one of two things. So a paper towel. I use Viva. I'm a Viva guy, and that's because Viva doesn't have a texture to it. It's more of a material. Notice, like other brands would have like things stamped in them. And if I'm going to be blotting with this, meaning pushing on it on the paper when it's wet, that whatever it is going to transfer to the paper. It'll act as like a stamp of some kind. So I don't want that. But yeah, the other thing I'm going to use is just like a facial tissue. So we'll see. There's a little difference, but the nice thing about the tissue is you can really wad it up and make it very organic. So I'm just going to cover this with with a wet wash. Cover things. Okay. Okay, blotting with facial tissue. And what this is good for is for making clouds. So let's see if we can make some clouds out of this. Okay, coming out all right. And you could come back in and scrub a little bit, but that's kind of the idea. Here's the Viva. So I'm gonna see if I can do that. And you can do a bit of scrubbing, but not much. Okay, sorry about that. I bumped it and change the position of it. But okay, so that is blotting. That's number 8. Number 9, we're going to use scraping. Okay, so we'll need to get a pretty solid wash on this. Sorry if that's hit. So I'm going to use some sepia here. And a little bit of, it doesn't really matter the color, okay? I'm just trying to keep on any of these, I don't think. No, the color doesn't matter. So I'm just going to do an even wash over this. Well, I might get a little dry brushy at the end, that's fine. The idea here is we'll show scraping. Okay, so scraping, so you kind of have to wait till it's just right, is one thing I've learned on this scraping. There's a wet scraping and a dry scraping, and I put another layer over this, so I'm going to have to bring this down a little bit. Yeah, so it's kind of all the same wetness, then it will dry at the same time, because just a second ago I had re-wet that, so now the top half was going to dry differently. So I'm going to let this get to a stage of matte. So right now it's pretty glossy, so I will come back to that as it dries. So that'll let me do quickly do number 10. How do we say that again? Sgraffito? Yeah, Sgraffito. Okay, so let's get some type of color down. Doesn't matter too much. Maybe we'll use a nice aqua. Do a wash down this page. Okay, so sgraffito in Italian, as you can see on there, it means to scratch. So what we're going to do is get some type of a semi-pointed object. What I have is a pen that has stopped working, no more ink in it. So while it's moist, while it's kind of shiny, I'll do some kind of drawing into it. Okay, I'm gonna let that sit a little bit, but you can kind of see what's going on, I think, is that I've made some indentations on the wet paper, so it's a lot more receptive to this pressure. And then as this paint dries, it goes into that valley that I've created. Okay, so back to our scraping. It's pretty damp here, so what we can do with it, yeah, I like. So this is scraping, is when it is kind of matte, right between matte and glossy, I guess, is that you can scrape into it. And what this one does in comparison to this one makes these troughs and it will flow in because you're doing it a little wet. This one's a little drier and I'm using a little bit of a broader scraper, and I'm actually scraping the paint away. If you look close, there's like, it scraped it down to the paper, and then there's like little paint mounds on each side of the scrape. And so it's pushed it out of, now it's, so we get that white showing through. I'm going to reserve this side for scraping when it's completely dry. So now we'll go into 11, which is water rubbing alcohol. I don't have any rubbing alcohol. I forgot to get that. But so let me just show you what the idea here is with water. And I'm going to probably use some phthalo blue. And I may just add some yellow to that, so we have okay, so we have some green. And now what I'm doing here is just a wet on wet mixture, so nothing that has to do with the water or the rubbing or anything. I'm just playing around with it a little bit. Grab some more. let that all mix a bit. Kind of another wet on wet. Also another way to do gradients is just drop it in when it's wet. Okay. Okay, cool. So this one is going to be our water or rubbing alcohol, and we have to wait a little bit on that until it is matte. This number 12, we're going to talk about soft edges. So our soft edges, let's grab some, actually that's really, so the question is like, how do you make soft edges if you need them? Let's say I've just painted some, like a big area here, and I go, whoa, I really do need some soft edges on that. So what I'll do is grab some pure water, and I'm using kind of a dry brush, and then I'm just simply going over the edge, and you can see what's going on. It just kind of created a nice, quite a soft edge, and the drier my brush is, the kind of smaller that soft edge is. Let me get a very wet brush, and I'll do this one over here. And sometimes you may need to tease that out a little bit, and it all depends on how wet your brush is and how wet the edges that you wanted to soften. So here's kind of a medium, a very fine, or a soft that's close to the shape, and then here's a very big soft edge. Okay, so I used a lot of water. I used a big distance on it, and it was quite a wet boy, sorry about that. It was quite a wet wash in the first place. Okay, so let's see. I should go back here. What I'm going to do real quick is, oh, and I will go back on this one. So this is number 11, water. Okay, I'm going to have to wait on that. So I'm going to dry this one so I can do some dry scraping into it. So just so you know, the wetter something is, the more it's going to spread. The drier it is, the less it will spread, right? So this is pretty wet. This is a kind of dry. This was very wet, and so we got a big soft, very soft when it's wet. And so here, well, let's see, that'll affect this water when we put the water down. It's still very, I put a really wet mix on here, so it's pretty glossy still. This is quite dry now. So what I'm going to do is grab, a lot of people bring like razors with them. I usually have an X-Acto. So this is the dry scraping. And let's try this. Let's just see where it's at. Get a small water sprayer, if I can find one. I do have these big ones, but they're kind of super misty. And what I'm trying to do is like splatter some water on here. There's other ways to do it. I think I'll just do another way. Another way of doing it is taking your brush, and it should have some water in it. And then you can put it against really anything. And what I did is I flicked some water on this. And because it's not completely dry but drying, the water is reactivating the paint, and it's kind of flowing away from each droplet. Now it's going to be a little different in here because this is very wet, and it's going to, not just be different is all. Okay, so this 11 is water rubbing alcohol. Yeah, so if I come back with some water, this is what's going to happen. Okay, I think we are done with this board. I'm going to move to another board. All right, so this board, we're going to do a lot of the optional techniques. So we'll do salt first. So I'm going to grab just a wash over one of these squares. And we're going to wait. It's not going to be right when it's wet or super glossy like mirror, but when it is, I'm going to have to right now it's mirror, and I just want it glossy. So I'm going to wait just a little bit on that. Next one, so let's give that a second, is splattering, which is basically what we just did with water. I'm going to show you. Let's see, so here's one way to do it, where we're just getting our brush. And you could mask some things. Let's see. Okay. Or you could even use a very old toothbrush for some very fine texture. You could get a more saturated okay. So one with the brush, one with toothbrush. Let's see, that was soft edges, salt, splatter. Let me see, that salt is probably getting close. So I just grabbed some, try my hands off. I'll put it kind of heavy in one area just so we can see what the deal is with that. Okay, so I just put salt on this one. So it needs to dry completely on its own. We'll see if that works. Hopefully it will. Let's see, stamping with a sponge. Yeah. If Find my sponges. That's a bad sign. Here we go. Okay. I'm going to re-wet my palette. Okay. So I guess what I'm going to do is this can work nicely for trees, for different type of like grassy foliage. And it's usually good to wait in between each application here. Okay, so I'm going to wait on that a little bit. So mixed media, let's take a look at mixed media. So I'm going to do some wet my page. I'm dipping my pencil in water, and now this is a watercolor pencil. This is a Caran d'Ache Super color, and it kind of breaks down a little bit right on the surface of the pencil, which is kind of interesting. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Water-soluble crayons. These are also Caran d'Ache. This is Neocolor 2 Aquarelle, and these are water-soluble. So, and this is kind of a pastel. This one, these are. But the cool thing is that they are water-soluble, and you can see what's going on there. They're already kind of just breaking apart. You don't have to use the brush. I was just kind of coaxing it. Get a little more value in here. Okay. And then we have gouache. So we could come in with gouache, couldn't we? Let's see if I can find my gouache. Do I have any in here? Did I bring any? I did, but I didn't, so I'm going to go grab some here. Okay, so gouache, just as a reminder, gouache is a super condensed watercolor, and it paints opaque, meaning you can completely cover things up with it, especially when it's dry. So we'll just kind of flick it through here, and maybe we'll come back and show you how that works when it's dry. But when it's wet, it's going to bleed just like any watercolor will. Okay. All right. You can see what that salt is doing. That's kind of interesting. I'll just move that up. Kind of cool. Let's see. Plastic wrap. Oh, where's the plastic wrap? I did have some, but I put it somewhere special. Now I'm at a loss of where that is. So let me start a wash, because that's going to be important, and then I'll go grab some out of the kitchen. So this is number 17, and I'm just going to use cerulean blue, and maybe we'll move that into aqua, or Yeah, turquoise. Okay, here we go. And let me go get that saran wrap. Oh, no, maybe it's right here. No. So I found that smaller sheets are a little bit harder to deal with just now with saran wrap. So while this is wet, I'll crumple up my saran wrap, and I'm going to lay it on this. And I'll try to just leave it alone till it's dry. Okay. Let me, since I'm here, I'm going to make another layer of this sponge. And yeah, if you want to retain this, it can be really helpful just to kind of put it up in your studio and go, okay, this is what doing this technique will do. It can be helpful. Okay, a resist. So there's a few different resists. Translucency. Translucency, yeah, that's actually an interesting one. Very simple. I'm just going to keep things very watery, like almost like a tea, right? So it's just a barely staining the paper. And the idea on this translucency is we'll let this dry, and then we'll put on the next kind of tea color or tea consistency over that. And it's just to really go, hey, this watercolor is meant to be transparent and to work in layers. Okay, resists. Let's see, I do have a resist here. So a resist is something that just, you can use a candle. I happen to have some white or clear wax crayons. So okay. So then we'll grab some some watercolor and go over that. Now there are different types of resists, right? So one is, oh gosh, what is that? It comes in a pen form. The name has just completely escaped me. It'll come to me in a sec. But the idea on the resists is that the watercolor won't stick to it. Like it won't be able to reach the paper because you're putting a resist on it. Okay, and that's just what's going on here. So that's just the clear crayon scribbled on it, and yeah, it can't reach it. Tape. We can see what tape is already doing with this. It's just not allowing it to reach the paper, but you can be a little more creative with your taping. But tape is a great resist, so, and it's nice where you can make a gradient over here, or you can do some very creative things along with taping, and then after it's dry, you pull it off, and you kind of have multiple effects on it, right? Oh, masking fluid. That was the other resist that I was trying to think of, but I don't have any. So yeah, actually those should be indented a little bit. Resists, and tape comes under that, crayon or candle, and then masking fluid. So what I want to encourage you afterwards is to label these, then take the picture, and then submit. Yeah, and some of these can be a lot. Okay, well, you know, there's still a few that I've kind of left hanging. For example, the transparency. We'll just let that dry a bit. The salt is pretty interesting. These are taking so long to dry that I'm just pulling up some of the wet paint with my dry brush. Let's see. I know this Saran wrap really does need to kind of stay put until it's dry. Like I'm tempted to get a hairdryer in here, and maybe I can for some of them. Here's some gouache. I mean, look at that gouache cover up that very dark purple. So very, very handy that way. But it still reacts with water, which is also nice. So you kind of get the same look and feel throughout. So let's say we wanted to soften that edge right there. Still could, because of those properties of gouache. Okay. Oh, and I should show you one more gouache if I can find it, which is just white. Yeah, here. Yeah, here's a white gouache. So yeah, it covers very nice, very opaquely. Let's do our other. Let's get some kind of tea going here. If we were to brush off some of the salt, that's not dry yet, but you can see these bloom. They basically suck in, or suck kind of like rice or something, where it sucks the moisture out of the surrounding area. And this is kind of what happens when water is put on a wet wash when it's too early. These aren't really bad. They can be kind of decorative, but these are called blooms, or cauliflowers. And some people who don't use the right water to paint ratio on top of an existing wash, they'll get flow back into it, and this could dominate the painting, and then all of a sudden you don't have any pigment in that area, right? It just kind of saps it out. Okay. Just gonna peek on this. See how this is fairly close. So that's kind of the idea on the saran wrap. The salt, let me just get a little dry. And you can see on this the whole idea of transparency. Just get some kind of green and over area here. Yeah, so yeah, the idea that you can see underneath washes. Okay, and you put all these different techniques together and you have a lot of possibilities in your arsenal, right? It just kind of expands your vocabulary, your mark making, your technique. Things are not out of your realm, really. Okay, so that takes care of the demo. I'm just trying to see if I missed anything on here. Yeah, we scratched out Strafigo or Strafido. This is splashing water into an existing wash. Alcohol would do something similar, but it pushes it out even further, rubbing alcohol. Blotting. Okay, I think you're all set. Thanks, everyone.